Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Guys, if you're looking for style, comfort, and versatility, check out the latest collections from Versed. Whether you're hitting the gym or tackling your daily routine, Verst's wide selection of menswear blends proven performance with a functional and classical look. Their new fleece collections are designed with premium fabrics, the perfect layered style that keeps you feeling good and looking even better. Explore the latest from Verst for next-level comfort and elevated style. Available only at Dick's Sporting Goods. Shop now at dicks.com/Verst.
Run a restaurant and you learn pretty quick. The sound of a crisp fry starts way before the first bite. As delivery and to-go keeps business booming,
Order for pickup.
McCain's SureCrisp fries keep orders crispy.
Hey, delivery.
After the trip, the crispiness comes through. McCain's SureCrisp fries. Go the distance. See how far our fries can take your business at surecrisp.com/delivery.
Bored at home? Head over to Chumba Casino and join some serious social casino fun. With hundreds of games at your fingertips, no purchase necessary. You can play anytime, anywhere. There's a special welcome bonus waiting for you when you sign up. Play for fun, play for free, and you could even redeem some great prizes. Visit ChumbaCasino.com and get ready to reel in the fun. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Come meet me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good evening and welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. With me, as always, Alan Medlock, Medlock1 on the Twitters, and we're both on Blue Sky. If you want to find us over there, why not? It's been a bit since Alan and I got a chance to get together. So, Alan, before we get into the baseball, how was your Thanksgiving?
Fantastic. It was good. It was a much needed break. Good time with family. The weather got a little cold here, but it was worth it. Bonfire, got everybody together. My son had to work. My daughter came home from school with her boyfriend, and it was a good time. Had a good time. How about yourself? I did see the lights, by the way.
Yeah, the lights are on. And the house is still standing at the moment, so that's always a good thing.
I got you.
Thanksgiving was good. Nothing too dramatic. Didn't have quite as much family as normal, and I had a good time with my parents. And my brother was up with his wife and one of his children. So, it was a good time. And then we've been decorating. The outside was done. The inside needs work. In fact, I've been this afternoon putting lights up around the house. So. We're getting there. We're getting there. Kind of like the Cardinals, who are getting there in their putting together of the front office. And Alan, I think since we talked, pretty much that's the big news. The big actual news. There's rumors and thoughts and other things like that. But the big news is really that they've gone out. Not only have they, hired new people for the front office, they've hired, people for brand new positions.
Sure.
And, we're not front office, we don't follow the front office people around the league like we do, here. But from all intents and purposes, all indications, I guess is a better word, they seem to be pretty good hires.
Yeah. It's one of those where it's tough to really delve into them just because there's not much, and they're coming from the type of organizations that have stockpiled some of these guys, but for lack of a better term, basically hired better than the Cardinals have. Let's put it that way. But I do think it's interesting and exciting that they're coming from pitching heavy organizations for the most part, especially the Seattle and Cleveland. And I thought about that, and I was like, this points to, I could see where a lot of these guys are picking up um where the Cardinals have wanted to go this whole time, and be the at the forefront of pitching technology, and had kind of had been lacking for, the lab still isn't up and stuff like that. To go to the pitching heavy organizations like they've done is exciting. I think that's probably a big indicator of more of the reset of how much we're going to see a bunch of these young guys get a chance to pitch this year, and prove what they've done, than any indicator we've had so far, to me. And to where you see that, Lynn and those guys are still out there, that where they could help, that this development comes as is just about perfect timing, that they're going to let these young guys throw quite a bit and see how much they can develop and what they can figure out.
Yeah, I agree, and what I like also about this, we've again, it's a running theme. What we've talked about there in being insular and stuff like that, and obviously that is going away, even just with Heim Bloom and Rob Ciferlio. But it, they didn't just go like raid Cleveland. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? They didn't just go raid one team or whatever. They've been grabbing people from now. Yeah, Day, what's his I forgot, I missed his first name here. Larry Day, he comes from the Cleveland organization. He worked with Rob Ciferlio over there. So yeah, but Carl Coughlin comes from he's been with the Giants, he's been with the Dodgers, and then Matt Pierpoint comes from the Mariners. So I do like the fact that they're casting this broad net. It's not,
yeah.
and I think it makes it easier to say that they're picking the right people, or at least some smart people, and not just, hey, I've come from Cleveland, so I'm going to pick all these guys that I know, because that could be good. I mean, Cleveland's obviously been very good at this, but I think being able to pull in from all these different organizations is going to be a huge win for the Cardinals.
Yes, without a doubt. It's um um that's the first thing that I thought of the progressive nature of going and getting those guys from those organizations. And you're right, it wasn't a just go ahead and grab everybody from Cleveland who's willing to work for me and nobody else. From
Hmm.
Portfolio, yeah, I mean, it's exciting, and I'm in one of those modes right now that I'm going to be excited about any hire that they make, just
Yeah,
because they're making a hire that probably should have been made 10 years ago.
right.
I say 10 years ago, but some time ago, that is proven that they're behind. That they're making some of these new positions, or reconfiguring old positions into these new positions, and to me, that's the exciting part of it. And I think that now it gets into one of those situations, and maybe looking at pie in the sky, but if they catch up with the rest of the league and are willing to surpass it with the young minds that they have in, man, you got to think that St. Louis could be pretty dangerous pretty soon.
Yeah, I think that that's the case. I mean, they're benefit from the division that they're in, and but yeah, in the young core that they have, I mean, and we'll kind of get to that a little bit here in a bit, but having this is not start from ground zero. This is starting from ground three or something like. You know what I'm saying? It's you're kind of already somewhat on that way. They've just got to develop pitching more than anything else, and maybe try to get the most out of people like Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman. But this isn't just we've got to get rid of all these old. It's not a Houston. It's not a Chicago from the last decade, where they had to really just tear it down and be terrible for a few years just to try to build it back up. That's not what the Cardinals want to do. The Cardinals don't feel like they can do, and they don't really need to do. That's the whole reset button rather than rebuild or anything of that nature that we've been talking about. So yeah, I think that it's good to see these guys come in. It's good to see these positions get created. Now it sounds like they're going to focus on the minor leagues and developing more coordinators and stuff. We talked a lot when Katie Wu's article came out at the end of the season about how they only had like 5 coordinators or something like that. That's going to change. It's going to definitely increase, and they're going to start having a little more help in the development side of things. So I'm excited about what this is. This is not, and we've talked about it. It's not a thing that you're going to see the results next year, but over time, like you said, they could be very dangerous very quickly.
Sure, and it's one of the I like the idea of still remaining competitive that they're kind of starting to sell now. As far as, hey, we understand they've added a safety blanket to this. If they're bad next year, like, hey, we warned you. That there's going to be some growing pains, but still remaining the least at least competitive to where moves like this could show that could add to a little bit of momentum and energy, but at some point in the season, and that's the one thing to where there's the new life aspect to it of it too, which is intriguing to me.
Yeah, yeah. I think now you say, and I think this kind of transitions me to what I've been thinking about as well. You talk about how the Cardinals have put in this idea that, if they struggle, they're going to be able to tell people, well, we kind of warned you that this was going to happen. And I get, and I think that's fair. And I think that's true, but I also think that's somewhat mitigated by some of the stuff that we're hearing this week, right? That, they may or may not trade Nolan or Arenado, which I don't know if that's a big thing, but the fact that they really don't even sound like they're that interested in trading Ryan Helsley. And I don't know. I mean, if you run back a lot of the same team from last year, can you really, and with the idea that they're also kind of putting out there that they could be competitive in the NL Central, which I think is reasonable. I mean, can you have your cake and eat it too, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a good question. I thought the same thing, and there is an element to me on the Helsley deal that I think that some of that doubling down is just to maximize your return, so to speak. You know what I mean? To drive up the return, and to me, in a closer role, I know that it's best to wait until the offseason to try to deal somebody because you have all the teams to deal with. But I think that you can get somebody to spend stupid at the deadline. And I wouldn't. So you kind of hedge your bets there a little bit.
Yeah.
And now I understand where you're coming from. He also is kind of that ticking time bomb, as is every closer. That you're kind of playing with fire on that a little bit. But I could see that going that direction because they also kind of prefaced it by saying, well, we're going to see where we are initially, type. If things tank out, we're going to start selling some more pieces off. So, yeah, I mean, I understand where there's concern with that, but I think that the messaging probably is misconstrued there a little bit, honestly.
I mean, that's possible. I do wonder, you're right. People can overpay at the deadline, but then they're also only paying for, 2 months versus a whole year. So does that counteract? Are you going to get about the same thing that you would now? That's assuming again that Helsley stays healthy, and he has a year similar to last year. Which I mean, there's no reason to think he wouldn't, but he's also a relief pitcher, right? So, um, I don't think that they should just trade Helsley to trade Helsley. So if they're not getting the return that they think they should, okay, I get that. But I don't know. I think what's going to be interesting to me, I was reading the Ken Rosenthal article that was talking about Helsley, but then he moved into talking about Devin Williams and that Devin Williams is very likely to be traded this winter. And I think that's the litmus test, right? If Devin Williams brings back quite a package, then I don't think you have any choice but to trade Ryan Helsley. But if he gets back, like a double A arm or something like that, or nothing in particular, then okay, then yeah, sure, you hold on to Helsley and you see what happens. But feels to me like if somebody goes out there and sets a market for closers that's a little bit higher than we're thinking right now, then I think you'd almost have malpractice not to.
I completely agree. I mean, and I've thought all along that he gets traded, and it almost makes too much sense. Makes no sense to keep him. Essentially, you know what I mean. Other than the messaging that they're kind of sending us that hey, we still want to remain competitive, and it's one of those where there's not a chance that that's an extension, is it? I thought about that after they made the comment.
I mean, I don't think. I mean, you see online where there's people that like Kyle, who's been a very big proponent of Helsley as a starter for a long time. saying if you sign him to an extension, you transition him to be a starter, which is what we see the Mets are doing with Clay Holmes.
Is becoming common, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm still not really sold on that return. I think they should. I think there's a very good argument to be made that they should never have changed Ryan Helsley from a starter
Yeah.
to a reliever. But after this long, I mean, we saw what happened with Jordan Hicks. He started off well, and then by the end of the year, he was back in the bullpen. It is going to be a long-term process. Helsley's 31, I think. I just I'm not sure about that. So if in that case, no, I just if you're not going to move him to be a starter, you can't extend him because you can't afford, I don't think, with what the
Your
Cardinals
money to go to
doing.
yeah.
Yeah, $20 million, $25 million
Yeah.
to go to a closer. I just don't think you can do that.
Sure, sure. And just even in a situation where it sounds like, leading the league in saves and all that, he's still not going to make what, $8 million next year,
Probably
through
not. No.
arbitration,
Yeah.
and it's, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I just kind of wondered, I'm like, you kind of lock down, but also in a situation like this, you also don't want to let leads blow. You don't want to blow leads. I mean,
True.
because that's usually where a lot of these start, or where they'll maintain to a guy a little bit later than usual to avoid that for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, it is demoralizing. We saw that in 23 a lot too, right? Because Helsley was hurt, and there wasn't really a really great option at the end of the bullpen, and so we saw leads get away. Of course, 23 they had a lot of games where their lead was gone after the first couple batters. So, but to see those kind of games slip away, especially on a team that best case scenario, right, is going to be fighting for either a wild card or a very weak division title, like 83, 84, 85 wins. You don't expect much more than that, even best case scenario. So to lose any game that you think you have won is going to be hard. So I get that. And I get that there's a desire to put the best product on the field next year that they can. But I don't know. It feels to me, and we've talked about it a lot in the past, that it's like you're trying to put one foot in one bucket, one foot in another bucket.
Mm-hmm.
And, how are you going to be able to fully commit to all this? I don't know. I mean, maybe you can do both. They can walk and chew gum, but it also feels like they could do a little bit more to get that rebuild going and have better talent in the organization if they traded somebody like Helsley. But, again, we don't know what the offers are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the, whenever the first report that came out about what teams were saying, I think I was watching Hot Stove, and they said what teams were saying that the Cardinals were asking for. I was afraid they were going to say they were setting a high price, not that they were going to hold on to him, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's a little bit different than I expected. And then you overthink it naturally, and you're like, well, does that mean this is just their bargaining power, or how are they going to handle it? But yeah, I mean, I could see both sides of it. I mean, it's gotten to I mean, I hate to say this on December 7th. It's gotten to a point now where, and we haven't been to the winter meetings yet, which are of course this week. So it's kind of foolish of me to say this next comment, but I wouldn't be surprised to see, Helsley and Arenado stay at this point. And I know that sounds silly, but I also wouldn't be surprised at this. I guess it's gone from expected to not surprised if they're both traded,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. I've always been, and again, I've tried to keep my bias out of it. I don't think I've been very successful at it, but I've always been a little bit hesitant to thinking that Nolan Arenado was going to get traded if the Cardinals aren't looking for a salary dump, which they keep saying they're not, and I agree that they probably aren't. There's just not that much that's going to come back, and Nolan's open to a trade, but he's not like, I got to get out of here like he was in Colorado.
Yeah.
So I don't think they trade Nolan Arenado for a single A ball player and $15 million of salary relief. I just don't think they do that. So I don't know, with Nolan having the last 2 years that he's had, I just don't know what his market is either. Right. So it's like, you're not going to get much because he's not produced at the level of his contract. But if you're not willing to just eat contract, then I just don't see how that happens, honestly. I know Kay Wu has put out there her opinions. It's about a 60% chance he does get traded, but and Katie knows what she's talking about, obviously, but I'm still very, very hesitant to believe that that's going to happen.
No, I'm becoming, unless it's just, I mean, yeah, you can only name a few teams that you would think that could and would be willing to do,
Right.
what could make that move. And I guess I just fluctuate on what I really thought, because I was like, there was a time where I genuinely thought he was the odd man out,
Hmm.
that the fit
Yeah.
just didn't sit, it wasn't there. But now I'm thinking, well, no, that it makes a lot of sense to be back, really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with all the with all the contractual obligations and him holding the cards.
And you wonder how much. I mean, it would free up time for younger players. There's no doubt
Yeah,
about it. But how much does it free up? Right. I mean, Nolan Gorman's going to play. I feel like no matter if Nolan Arenado's are on the team or not.
yeah,
Brendan Donovan's going to play. Um, could you get a Jordan Walker over there? Maybe. I mean, it's going to increase the at bats for all these guys if Nolan Arenado's not around. But I don't think it's a situation. Well, let's go back to 2000 when Fernando Tatis was sitting on this roster, and the Cardinals traded Tatis because they wanted to have a spot for Albert Pujols to be able to play. Right? There's
yeah,
nothing like that. It's not a situation where if Nolan Arenado stays, player X is going to be playing in Memphis, but if he goes and he gets the chance to play in the major leagues, I don't think that happens. So, is the increase in at bats for everybody else, which is going to be probably spread around, right? It's not going to be like Jordan Walker gets all those at bats or anything like that. Does that make enough of an impact that the Cardinals say, "Hey, we have to move him"? And I don't know. I don't think so. Um, Add that to the mentoring that he was doing last year. I know that he gets a lot of grief for, the idea they had to bring in all these veterans, but I think we saw some growth in Nolan Arenado in that regard this last year. I think it still makes sense for the Cardinals to keep him, but again, I understand that probably makes sense for him to trade him too.
yeah. That's it's kind of going both ways for me. I mean, especially now, I guess because I just don't want to endure a long summer of just being really terrible. And
Yeah.
I don't think they would be regardless, but I want to stay in contention as long as possible, just to enjoy it. And this is completely selfish. And with that being said, I think that Arenado and Helsley in the lineup, lead to that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of me to where, like I said, it's gone from expected to not surprised, and may even go down further after what we hear. And like I was just now reading a Buster Only article about how it's such a limited market for him that it's going to be hard to move, and which
Mm.
same thing was said when the trade of St. Louis was made, but we kind of knew that was something that the Cardinals could do. So I don't know, but I get the 60-40 makes sense, but mine kind of goes lower just about every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Now, there's still two people out there that don't get a lot of talk about. We are seeing occasional mentions of Steven Matz
Yeah,
being moved, especially when you see what the people like Frankie Montas and Clay Holmes and Luis Severino have already signed for. Matz makes sense for a budget. He's making what, $11 million this year if he can stay healthy, which is a huge if. Obviously, he's pitched basically one full season over the last three. But if he can be moved, if somebody thinks he can be healthy or at least healthy enough to give them some insurance, I mean that feels like a move that the Cardinals can and will make because it doesn't matter as much what they get back for him.
yeah, exactly. Because that's uh, I know it sounds crazy, and they never looked at it this way, but yeah, the return on Matt's, and I think less on Matt's than it is Michaelis at this point, but the it would seem just to be a bonus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the message is what we think it is.
I think so. And you mentioned Michaelis, that was the other one.
Yeah, and
Um,
I thought about that to jump ahead. I
no,
apologize.
no, no, that's fine. And you're right. I mean, but I think it's I think that the Cardinals have put him out there and probably just haven't gotten any response because we're not hearing anything. I mean, he hardly ever gets mentioned as a guy that would be able to move, right? And I just don't. I mean, again, he's got no trade, but I think he would waive it. But he's not going to waive it to go to Pittsburgh or, I mean, maybe to Kansas City. I guess we used to say no for that, but I guess Kansas City's it might be an attractive destination now. I just don't know. I mean, it's very hard to imagine anybody actually wants him. So you're kind of stuck. I think that's why it feels like they need to trade somebody like Helsley, just because that's an asset that they actually has value that they could trade. They don't have very many of those, and they've never been at a spot where they can maximize the value of a player that they could trade high. And again, the market may not be there, but they've just never been in this situation because it's always a situation where a guy's doing really well, but they need to keep him, or he's not, he's doing well, but he's not a free agent. And so they're going to, all that. But to have a guy have his career year right before he becomes a free agent, the season before he becomes a free agent, it feels like it's an opportunity that doesn't come around very often.
Yeah. What do you feel like? What's the likelihood that they both break camp with the big league club?
Arenado and Helsley.
Yeah. No.
No.
Well, Michaelis and Matz. I'm sorry.
Oh, Michaelis and Matz.
Yeah, I meant to. Yeah.
Both of them. I would say it's probably kind of low. I would say it's probably 35% because I think Matz gets traded.
Yeah. Agreed.
If you were telling me, if you put Helsley, Arenado, and Michaelis, there's probably a 75 to 80% chance that all three of those guys are back, right? But when you put Matz in there, it changes the equation.
Yeah.
So the Cardinals feel like they haven't changed their approach over the last couple of years, right? I mean, it always seemed to be like they do just enough in the winter, maybe plug some holes. I mean, last year, obviously, they plugged holes, although not necessarily the way we expected them to. Hope for a weak division and, try to get in with 82, 83 wins. And it kind of feels like that's what they're doing right now, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to go out and get anybody, but they continue to talk about being competitive, which they can be. I mean, it's a team that's got talent, but it feels like it's more about, the Brewers just lost to Dems. Are the Cubs and the, Reds going to do anything? This is a division that may just kind of sit on its hands. And if they do that, I mean, the Cardinals were second last year. There's no reason to think that they can't improve, or be in contention, even when they're, kind of trying to transition like this.
Yeah, I thought about that too. It was, who was it on one of the national shows? I mean, you literally touched on something they had talked about of, this is kind of a no-lose situation in theory for the Cardinals because they've paid a lot and went out and plugged some of these holes with some of these contracts to come up with the hope that they were going to be right there on the edge of the playoffs or sneaking in and playing in a weak division to where now you promote you just give the young kids a chance to play and develop with the hope that they can sneak in and maybe make a run in the playoffs, and also now have the safety net of, we kind of warned you that this may not be the year that we're wanting to, but we're building to it. So yeah, I mean, depending on how you look at it, that seems to be exactly what they're doing. But the optimism in you and in both of us seem to be high when it's like, hey, play the young guys and see what you want, and as long as we play competitive as late into the year as possible, then I'll feel good about it. And
yeah, and
maybe that's not the right way to do it, but.
No, I think I think that makes sense, but I also think that you had a chance. This is a fan base that doesn't want to not win, obviously, and expects to win. But I also think you had it a little bit primed here, right? To say, okay, we're gonna take this step back, because it's what they kind of said, and that's if they won 75 games this year, we wouldn't be thrilled about it, but we'd understand it if they had gotten rid of the assets they need to get. Now, if they win 75 games next year with Nolan Arenado, with Ryan Helsley, with Steven Matz, then it's hard to imagine that this isn't, I wouldn't say a failure because of the offseason hirings in the front office that will take some time, but it kind of is not as successful of an offseason as it could have been.
Sure. If you is, how do I ask this? Do you feel like 75 win pace in July precipitates further clearing out? I mean, what I'm saying, could you figure that out before the trade deadline?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, and that's the thing, right? I mean, if they're on a 75 win pace at the All-Star break or beginning of July, then I think they have to, and that may still only be Helsley if he's doing well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the worst case scenario is Helsley's hurt or ineffective. Nolan Arenado's continued to slide, and Steven Matz got hurt, and so you get to the All-Star break on that 75 win pace, but with absolutely nothing to deal.
Yeah.
And so you're just gonna have to rely on internal development. I don't know how likely that is, but I think that's the kind of the worst case scenario of you can't even clear out at the All-Star break like we did in 23, because there's nothing to trade. I mean, that you want to try. I mean, could you see a trade at that point in time for Nolan Gorman, depending on what he's doing? Yeah. But if Nolan Gorman's hitting like he needs to be traded, they're going to keep him. And if he's struggling to the point that they might actually trade him, then he's probably not going to get anything. So you get into that catch-22 so often of, a good player. Well, I want to keep him, but because we don't have the backups, but if they struggle and you might want to move on, you're going to be selling low. So, I mean, that's that's the really, like we said, that's the thing about Helsley. That's why, I wrote an article last year at the trade deadline saying, I know the Cardinals are, at the time, I think they were the last wild card or they were one game out. It's like, you ought to trade Helsley now.
Yeah, agreed.
Because the market was hot and you weren't going anywhere last year, and you needed to go ahead and move that. And instead of that, they're going to maybe, it sounds like maybe trade him at the deadline this year, but maybe not. I mean, there is a non-zero chance that Ryan Helsley walks away at the end of 25 and you've got nothing to show for it.
Sure. Yeah. Without a doubt. That's what kind of makes, I'm not so certain you don't have to say the things that Mo said. You know what I mean? But he has also made the comments of we've approached guys with long-term contracts about, what our plans were. So that's why my mind is kind of racing on how they have handled Helsley a little bit. Of have they said, hey, what would you think about staying around long term? What are you this and this and this? I just don't. I mean, it's kind of strange because I felt like that would have been the first drop in the bucket as far as the trades go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, or at least would have felt like it was clearly going to happen.
Yeah.
Unlike now, like you said, it feels like much more likely that the Cardinals will hold on to him. And again, it could be posturing, but the Cardinals aren't really. I mean, it would fit what the Cardinals have done for the last 15 years, probably, if they kept him and just try to roll on with what they had.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's who they are. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, which has been successful for the most part, but now it's the black eye. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's odd because, the minute that Katie's article came out about what the expectations were getting ready to be for the Cardinals and about how development was going to be the issue. Honestly, I thought it made, I thought it was a foregone conclusion that he would be traded. And it's to make it where we are now is crazy. And I mean, I like to see it, but you and I had both talked about that about a year ago of, hey, that may be a situation where you have to deal in now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. And it's hard to. I mean, again, with Mo still at the helm, how much change comes. I mean, I think if we were sitting here this time next year and Heim Bloom is the one that's running the show, we wouldn't feel quite as confident about anything, right?
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't know what he's going to do. But even if Mo is talking about change and what they need to do, and again, they are making those moves, at least in the administrative side of things. But it's also, again, becomes hard to imagine Mo selling a piece when he didn't have to. I
Yeah.
mean, how many times has he held on to like 15 catchers until there's absolutely no value left in them
Yeah.
before he trades them? So, again, I'm. It's going to be very interesting here in the next year or two to see if our mindset changes about how the Cardinals do business. But for right now, it's very difficult for us to not think they're going to do it exactly like they've been doing it.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's going to be a show me deal. You know what I mean? Or prove it, and we'll see. I do think the idea of Bloom and the fact that we know what's going on, and the national pundits now know what's going on, that it does give me a little more energy. And this is coming from I love the Mo time and Mo himself, and it's
Mhm.
it's one of those with the changes necessary just because of the apathy that it's set in. That I do feel like there's some energy this year that we kind of know what's coming or expect what's coming, but there's still an energy to it. The fact that Bloom's involved and a lot of these moves that are being made, you could tell has his stamp all over them, and that's fairly exciting to me. The best podcast in baseball, the last one was a Rob Bradford from you know. From the Red Sox beat, and he has a podcast of his own. Was on and was showing and explaining the benefits of Bloom and what happened to him. And the sad part that really made me nervous was what got him fired was the attendance went down. The interest overall started falling apart, and he gave a great explanation of why it would work somewhere else that simply wouldn't work in Boston, just because he was more handcuffed by the ownership more than anything.
Mhm.
And you got to think that was probably part of the interview process here, I would assume.
Yeah, I'm sure he wanted to know what the idea was. I mean, I'm sure it's like, okay, I know we're going to have financial limitations just because of where we're at, what the market is, and what TV deals and stuff like that. But I want to know, am I going to have to trade a Mookie Betts again?
Yeah,
Or something like that. And I would assume that means that he got answers in the affirmative,
yeah.
or it made him feel better that he would not have to be in that position again.
Well,
Um,
and they had pointed to overall ownership lack of interest.
yeah.
In the interview, and that's one thing that I don't feel like that we've ever seen. You know what I
Mm-mm.
mean? I
No.
understand that. I guess you could point to some things with all the being being it with it being more of a real estate venture per se, but I don't know if it's ever been a of lack of interest, apathy, boredom from ownership.
Yeah, I don't think so, either. I mean, the ownership in Boston had, what, Formula One and soccer and
Yeah,
all these other things, and, even for the Cardinals, like you said, the real estate, most of that real estate still ties to the Cardinals, right, with Ballpark Village and stuff like that. They still need the team to be good. As much it doesn't have to be great, but it does have to be good. I don't think there's ever a time where Bill DeWitt doesn't know where the Cardinals are in the standings and how things are going. He's got it. I think the whole DeWitt family has a pretty good pulse on it. They may have different ideas about how to approach it than we do, but I don't think there's not any neglect there. Um, so yeah, that is an engaged ownership. Can be good. I mean, you like to have an engaged ownership that might have a little bit. I mean, the Steve Cohen types, right? That go in and want to be part of it, but they also want to spend a lot of money. Um, that doesn't mean it's going to work out, though. Those kind of deals can work and might blow up. That's kind of the situation with the Mets a lot. So, um, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that Bloom probably is glad to work for an ownership that is engaged. And if he probably did in Tampa Bay, right? I feel like the ownership in Tampa Bay is another ownership that is very involved. They just don't have the financial resources
Sure.
because of the market to do some of the things that he could do in St. Louis.
Yeah, well, and that was the another one of the comments on there was that that Boston handled it poorly because they were expecting to get Tampa Bay,
Yeah.
at the time, and I wish I could quote it exactly, but I can't. But it was their expectations for Bloom weren't necessarily realistic, and that of course did involve trading bets.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. We will see. I'm very excited about the fact that they've brought in these new guys for different positions, and there's going to be a lot more focus paid on this. And I don't know, probably 3 years before you can really start to judge
Sure.
how that goes.
Yeah.
But even I think it's going to be fun to see what happens with like this year's draft class. Do they start taking people that are different than the Cardinals typically have taken? Do they take people more in line with what Cleveland has taken in the past, or something like that? I don't know. I think that will be interesting to see. So, I know it's short, but it's also not a time that has a whole lot of news on it. The Cardinals do go to winter meetings next week. Do you think anything comes out of winter meetings that affects the Cardinals?
I think if there's going to be an Arenado trade, it'll happen this week. I think that we're also I say that just because I expect Soto to sign, and I think the floodgates do probably open after that because he holds up so much, and the angles of so many other teams are predicated on the 3 or 4 teams that could potentially sign him right now. That I think things would open up a little bit. I was surprised Adama signed today. Honestly, I thought he may be maybe the second tier, or not second tier, but the top 2 free agent this year. That I was surprised that he signed before Soto, just because I think there's so many other things that are going to happen. Potentially, the loser of the New York sweepstakes that does not sign him is going to shake some things up, I would assume. Because then you're going to have, if it's not the Mets, you're going to you got to figure out the Alonso deal and a lot of moving parts on that. And if it's the Yankees, you're going to have to just get better overall, and that could be exciting. So I think there's going to be a lot of movement. That being said, I think that would want to be the bigger names. That if he does get traded, it probably happens this week.
Yeah. It may very well may be. I've seen some reports that make that sound like it's more of a past into January type of thing, but I think also you're right. I mean, if it's going to, I mean, we see it. I mean, obviously he came over from Colorado at the end of January, I think, or maybe it was the end of February even. I don't remember. I mean, these deals happen. That's the January, but still, I don't feel like it happens all that often. It feels like those kind of deals get done. Yeah, like you said, winter meetings or soon after. So we'll see. I just expect the Cardinals will go and not do anything, which is fairly typical, I guess. But
Yeah.
there's just, and at least this year, there's just not anything we want them to do. There's not a go sign Sonny Gray like they did last year, which they did before the winter meetings, but or go sign, go get after Corbin Burns, or or do this or do that. I mean, right now I think we're just in that idea of okay, you didn't do anything, so fine. I mean, because there's really nothing we expect them to do, right? I mean, they have holes, especially in the pitching staff, but we know that they're going to fill those with internal options because they want to see what these guys can do. So, I mean, there's no reason to start clamoring. I mean, nobody's clamoring for Juan Soto. They know better than that, right? They don't even have to pretend like they're going to talk to Juan Soto like they did with Harper or Machado or anybody like that. So, I think Mo just gets a nice little free vacation to some degree at his last GM meeting.
Yeah. Dallas isn't that exciting.
Yeah. So, where do you think Soto goes if you were going to pick?
You know what? I just get the feeling that the Mets are going to outspend everybody, and for better or worse.
Yeah, I think that's not an unreasonable thing. I still kind of feel like maybe he goes back to the Yankees. Yankees need him as well, and they really need a World Series.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah.
So putting him and Judge together for another couple of years or however, I don't know how long Judge's contract is, but having that opportunity it's going to be very difficult, I think, for the Yankees to pass up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've done enough damage for today. We do have a moment of history from our friends at Remembirds and Richard over there. But I also wanted to highlight there's another podcast out there that's dealing with the history of the Cardinals. It's called St. Louis Cardinals Beyond the Hall of Fame. And you can find that one on Spotify. I think it's only on Spotify. But you can find it over there. And they've had some good interviews and thought that wanted to give them a little bit of highlight of a shout out. So we might have these guys on during our Guestapalooza as we have it coming up here pretty soon as Alan is starting to gear up for that high school season. I mean, you pretty much hit the ground in January, don't you?
Well, we officially started practice December 1. Yep. So we're rocking and rolling now. We'll go. I'll be here through the holidays and into January. Like scrimmages don't start until February, so we'll be good for a while.
All right,
but I do have basketball, so
yeah, that there's that too. Yes,
yeah.
So, I know we've already got Jeff Jones lined up for his normal intro to the season, and we've got Katie that's going to be here close to the end of the month, and we're still reaching out to others and look forward to getting our normal cast of characters together, and hopefully some of these times Alan will join us as well if things work out. So anyway, until next time, for Alan, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Good night.
Hi, everyone. Rich Bray here with another look back at Cardinals history. Today, let's revisit the Cardinals signing of Lance Berkman ahead of the 2011 championship season. After the Cardinals finished second in the NL Central in 2010, General Manager John Mozeliak wasted little time rounding out his roster in preparation for 2011. He started by re-signing starting pitcher Jake Westbrook in mid-November, then trading pitching prospect Blake Hawksworth to the Dodgers for shortstop Ryan Theriot. On December 4th, the Cardinals added switch-hitting power to their lineup when they signed Berkman to a one-year, $8 million deal. Berkman was coming off a 5-year, $72.5 million contract that he originally signed with the Astros, where he was a 5-time All-Star and practically made a living against Cardinals pitchers, batting .313 with 39 homers and 118 RBIs for his career against St. Louis. However, arthroscopic surgery on his left knee forced Berkman to open the 2010 season on the disabled list. He never quite regained his offensive form that season, and at the trade deadline, the Astros traded him to the Yankees for Mark Melancon and Jimmy Paredes. In 37 games with the Yankees, Berkman hit .255 with 1 homer and 9 RBIs while primarily playing DH. He finished the season with a .248 batting average, 14 homers, and 58 RBIs, his lowest total since he played just 34 games as a rookie in 1999. In addition to concerns about Berkman's bat, the Cardinals faced significant questions about whether he could play the outfield, a position he hadn't played regularly since 2004. Ultimately, however, those questions were part of the reason Berkman was available and willing to sign a 1-year contract. The deal worked out for both sides. Not only was Berkman a veteran presence in the Cardinals clubhouse, but he returned to offensive form, batting .301 with 31 homers and 94 RBIs to place 7th in the NL MVP voting. He then continued to be an impact bat during the Cardinals' World Series run. In Game 1 of the NLDS, Berkman hit a 3-run homer off Roy Halladay, then hit .300 in the NLCS against the Brewers. In the World Series, he hit .423 and was one of the heroes of Game 6, where he hit a 2-run homer in the first inning, then added an RBI single in the 10th. Berkman received another 1-year contract for 2012, but injuries limited him to just 32 games. He played his final big league season in 2013 with the Rangers. So that's the story of how Lance Berkman became a key piece of the Cardinals' 11th World Championship. For more Cardinals history, visit stlredbirds.com or follow me on Twitter at Remembirds, REMEMBIRDS. Thanks.
Tying run at second base. In the air to right center. This game is tied. Going to third is Pujols, and it's 9-9. They just won't go away.